We go straight to our guest in studio. Joining me this morning is Mr. Watson Duke, political leader of the PDP, Progressive Democratic Patriots. And we will be talking, of course, what happened earlier this week in Parliament. We'll talk briefly about the rejected Tobago Autonomy Bill, or rather the amendment, all right, to the Constitution. And of course, we talk about the other issues surrounding it. So good morning, Mr. Duke.
Good morning, ma'am.
And of course, welcome to on the set this morning. And we'll get right into it, Mr. Duke. I know you would have come with your point of view and the points you want to share. But even before you get to maybe what you have on your agenda, I want us to look at the definition of internal self-government. How would you define that? And do you think that Tobagonians, not even Tobagonians, because Trinbagonians really understand what Tobago is asking for?
Well, internal self-government is a mixed up word. Self-government is governance of oneself. So internal self-government speaks to a type of political status. So it says to the listener that there is someone who is bigger than me, and I'm asking them for permission to govern myself within their parameters.
Right.
Again, let me repeat that. You are saying to the listener that there's a power, there's a governance structure that is bigger than me. And I'm asking that government structure to govern myself within their parameters.
Right.
That is internal self-government. In a real case, it's Trinidad. It's Trinidad and Tobago. There's no place called Trinidad.
Right.
There's Trinidad and Tobago, the country, that has the governance structure. And Tobago is therefore excised from Trinidad and Tobago and called a ward. And the ward Tobago is asking Trinidad, give us some rights so we can govern ourselves within the country Trinidad and Tobago. It's an oxymoron. It's an abnormality. It really is the lowest form of governance. A little better than slavery.
And it's interesting that you should mention that there's no country named Trinidad. And I remember, being a university student abroad, every time I'm coming home to Trinidad, I will just write, whatever, and I'll just write Trinidad. And I remember one particular immigration officer was very irate, and he, some of them are very zealous with their job. And he's like, what is this? What is this? It's Trinidad and Tobago.
That's right.
And from then on, I could never, ever just write Trinidad or Tobago alone because, it resonated with me.
Yeah.
Really, the country is Trinidad and Tobago. If we're talking about an island, then we can say the island of Trinidad, the island of Tobago. But do you think people really understand what internal self-government is? And just in general, what Tobago is asking for? Because I hear a lot of comments, especially coming from Trinidad. And, every time we discuss internal self-government, you hear, they want to be on their own, let them go, they can't survive. And, that kind of, and I wonder if people really understand what internal self-government for and what the people of Tobago are asking for.
Right. Internal self-government is a choice. And I don't think Trinidadians understand the term, and Tobagonians, we do not understand the term.
Okay.
Right? It is a choice that a people who were under colonial subjugation, they have to make that choice. But the choice is not the only choice. There are two other choices. There's the choice of independence. Tobago can be independent by law. That's based on international standards. Tobago can also have an association with Trinidad, which is also by their own choice. We can have autonomy. Autonomy is a choice. Autonomy can be broken down into internal self-government. It can be broken down to a federal system. All these are forms of what we call autonomy.
Right.
But separate and apart from autonomy, there is independence, which is a very admirable thing. There is also association, which is Tobago is independent, and the country it chooses to associate with is also an independent country. But they say, let's share borders, let's share economic zones, let's share laws. The European Union is a bunch of European countries that come together and say, let us minimize the differences, let's form laws. So they form laws for the European Union that covers everyone who agrees to it.
Okay.
If your country do not accept that law, it is not enforced upon you. They share currency. They share security. That's an association. The Eastern Caribbean states, they have an association.
Right.
They're all independent. They have their own judicial, legal governance system. But when coming to the dollar, they share the dollar and some level of security, I guess. So we can explore that with Trinidad. But from since the talk came up in 1977 with the motion for self-government moved by A.N.R. Robinson, seconded by Dr. Winston Murray, since that moment, the idea has been for internal self-government, and that is a sham. It's a betrayal of our people. Nobody in Tobago has come together and said, we want that. They are very skilled in smartmanism and skullduggery. They go into a room with 10 or 20 people, claim it's a consultation, and then say this.
Who goes into the room with 10 or 20 people? Who are you speaking about?
Those people who hold themselves are having consultation on the issue.
Okay.
Right? When you look at the statistics on the government page, it's about 1,300 persons they would have interviewed. Right? And they have emails coming in from a few hundreds. That does not represent Tobago. These are serious life-changing issues. And therefore, what we need to have when we speak of internal self-government or independence or association, we need to have a campaign where each of the three issues are presented, their merits and the demerits, the plus and the drawbacks, and allow persons to ask questions, to choose. But you only choose by voting. Every single one must know this date.
Okay.
We vote for one out of the three positions. And where you drop a stop, where you hang your swing, they have chosen.
But who facilitates that? Does the law facilitate that in its current form for that to be done?
Lovely question. This is what the law ought to say. Now, currently, the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2021, that's the bill that failed.
Right.
The Tobago Self-Government Bill that passed, but it lacks the supporting legal framework in which you can operate.
Right.
Right? So everything collapsed, therefore. Let's say that Tobago, House of Assembly, ought to go to Trinidad and say, all we want from you is a framework by which we can conduct our own self-determination. We want you to put in the Constitution the framework for our self-determination. And they have the framework, but the framework is in an infantile stage called the preamble. So in the preamble of that Constitutional Amendment Bill 2021, it states that there shall be equality between Trinidad and Tobago. They acknowledge that.
Right. But the preamble, does that hold any legal weight?
No, it doesn't. So I'm coming to that.
Right.
So, and the second part of it also states that Trinidad will have self-determination and Tobago will have self-determination. And they spell out what self-determination is, which is to freely, without any external pressures, to pursue its own political status, and there are three: independent, autonomy, and association, and to freely pursue its economic, social, and cultural development.
Right.
Those are things there. But the preamble is the story before the story.
Yeah.
The preamble is the snapshot of what's coming. In the body of the material, let me put it this way, in the body of the real sections that gives life to the Constitution, life to the THA, there is nothing. There is not a smell or shred of self-determination. So that's my problem. And all I want the government to do is to just give us self-determination, give us that right. And the right, they can state how the right operates. The right shall be done through a referendum where it will take about 2 years of consultation and 1 day of decision. You can't rush this. This is not a 1 month, 2 weeks thing.
But
this
Mr.
is
Duke,
a 2 years business.
Right. So this has been going on from ever since. And yes, you're proposing in terms of how the law can facilitate in the future that referendum to having vote, and the government, but no sitting government has even facilitated the request of internal self-government and the bills or the ideas that were constructed on the island and presented to them. So how will we even get to that stage? Because there seems to be a hurdle in giving Tobago that, for want of a better word, that power.
You're right. That hurdle starts with Tobagonians. We are putting up our own hurdles. When you have Tobagonians who are under the PNM party singing from the PNM handbook that the bill is good enough for us, we should pass it. We know that they are hurdles. When we hear someone like our chief secretary speaking all type of gibberish, one day it's autonomy, next day it's self-determination, the other day is independence, that's a hurdle. When a person is confused, they are seldom to act on the information before them. When a person is clear in their mind, they will act decisively, and positively in their own favor. That's why I'm saying this is not something that we can rush. This is something that we have to take a year to 2 years doing, going every nook, every cranny, ensure every single one has a viewpoint on this. We ought to be doing surveys, asking people, training people. So if we have independence, these are our rights. If we have autonomy, these are our rights. If we have an association, these are our rights. And we should present it.
So do you think the process was rushed? If we're looking at from in the 1970s to now, and I hear you in terms of consultations, but you had former political leaders, you had different persons coming together. You had the efforts of Mr. London, you had the efforts of the late Ho Choi Charles, you had the efforts of A.N.R. Robinson, Dr. Murray, and we can go on and on. And people would have been consulted over all these years. The documents would have changed in some areas. Some areas it would have been held true to its existence. So are you saying that the process was rushed? Because you are making the point it should not be rushed. Do you think that the process was rushed?
The process was rushed, but there was no will in the process to expose Tobagonians to self-determination. It's like you taking your child to the ice cream shop and you are saying to the child, you want coconut ice cream because you love that, And I say, it has coconut ice cream here. You want that? Because you want to get a lick. Not the child,
Okay.
And as soon as I buy it for the child, is you licking it. I say, look, let me lick some more of that. That's your ice cream. They are giving us what they like. And they're pushing on us through persons who have a type of authoritative presence. And they say, these people do the consultation. Those things are not right. If we are going to have the discussion, it must be genuine, it must be full, and it must be unencumbered and not influenced from anyone outside. No one from Trinidad should come here and say they're presenting Prime Minister. No. We have to run them out of town. This is our business. We must decide for ourselves. It's an inalienable right, a right we were born with. We can't divorce ourselves from that right. 1,000 years could pass. We still have that right in Tobago. It's a legal, fundamental right.
So, and again, I'm trying to get us to the place where we are at because everybody has their viewpoint, etc. But the situation we are in now is that we answer to Trinidad, right? They set the pace for us. Yes, we have the THA Act, etc. But we fall under central government and the powers rest within them. So given the fact that we may feel we have these rights or we may interpret this, the changes has to be done by Parliament. Yes?
Yes.
Whoever is the sitting government of the day. And I would have mentioned, and we all know that we have had past political parties sitting in the government seat. And in the request for internal self-government, the bills, etc., were presented and it would have failed. Why do you think this keeps failing?
Because the people of Tobago, one, they are not happy with what is placed on the table deep in their hearts through our ancestors from since we were divorced from having executive powers in August of 1876. That's when they took away the executive powers in the House of Assembly. We have been trying to get back those executive powers, those lawmaking powers, those decision-making powers. We have never gotten back even to this day. We have the House, we have this, people dress up like myself, we go there. We pretend that we are politicians and all we do is play games. So we're debating what? And so we are not happy. We want to have the right to choose. If we are given the right to choose, then Tobago will make a choice and will stand by that choice.
But as it stands, Mr. Duke, we don't have that right. So looking at where we are today, how do we get because the proposals were there, and whether who would have drafted it, come up with it, who reject, etc. Something was in Parliament, and it's there because Parliament has the power to say yay or nay, and they are guided, of course, by whether it's 2/3 majority, simple majority, etc. And no matter who has been sitting in the government seat, the bill, whatever form it would have been presented in then, keeps being rejected. And the question is, why do you think they are the ones in Parliament to say yea or nay, whether we would have been part of the consultation, etc. In whatever form, it keeps failing. Do we think that at some point, whether it's PNM, whether it's PDP, whoever sits in government will say, okay, let me grant you your request. Let me take this seriously and let's really work something out and give it to you.
I like your latter suggestion. If the PDP gets into office, I guarantee you that that will be on the legislative agenda and very high up. It will be among the first 3 bills to be discussed. All right?
Mm-hmm.
And leaders are made a particular way by God. Right? You could be the head of a class, but you're not the leader.
Right.
Right? You could be the head of a line, you're not the leader.
Right.
A leader is a servant. That's why he leads. He demonstrates and he leads, so people know exactly what to do. He doesn't tell people walk and he's driving. He walks and he follows. Right? That's how you know a leader is in the particular geographical location. The country, Trinidad and Tobago, and the world, the Caribbean, they lack leaders. The day Watson Solomon Duke lands himself in Trinidad as a representative for Tobago, East or West, wherever, that is the day change will come to the Parliament. When I come, I enter there with my respect, right? I'm a senior man in the country. I know junior man. I'm in the business so long, right? And I know exactly what I want. I'm clear. I want Tobago to choose. It's not for me to tell Tobago, this good for you, that good for you.
Okay.
Having a discussion means you're part of the solution. And if you're part of the solution, it's likely that the solution will be backed by you. I know servant leadership. I spent years doing that. Even when I won, I demonstrated servant leadership. I allow my colleagues who were bereft of any idea. I said, look, continue. Or they feel I'm the bad one. Continue. I left them there. So they can pursue the plans undisturbed and they're making a mess. Tobago needs to put its best foot forward politically. You can't guess that. It's not guesswork in Trinidad, you know. The first thing I would fix in Trinidad would be the Trinidad and Tobago Act of 1887. That still stands. That colonial act, I will fix that act with its amendments. It was amended in 1898 to make Tobago a ward of itself. An abnormality, an oxymoron.
But when you say you fix it, you see, it's easy for individuals to talk like this. But when you get in, the organization or the institution operates a particular way. So though you may go in with all good intention and you may say you will change this, can you really change it? Because you have to get the support of others and see in your vision and understand why the change has to be made. And that's why, you know, we see bills failing because there's no buy-in. So when you take that responsibility and you are confidently saying you will change it, are you sure?
Well, let me tell you this, right? Watson Solomon Duke, should I accept the position of running for Tobago, East or West, and the people give me their vote, they will know their vote means for me to go down to Trinidad and change it. Should there be a 50-50 in Trinidad, and I'm the deciding factor, everyone knows in Trinidad, I'm supporting no one for Prime Minister. I've tried that in 2 places, and I was disappointed significantly. I tried it in the PSC, I lost tremendously. I tried it in THA, and I lost tremendously. I am not going to make either Kamala or Dr. Rowley, or anyone he puts there as Prime Minister. I am Prime Minister. The thing about life is, no one wants to be in opposition. It's a long time. 5 years in opposition, it's a long time. They will come. They will join. As the Westminster system dictates, the Prime Minister is the one who governs Parliament. When I'm inside, I don't grant charge and I'm in charge, you know.
Right.
When I'm in charge, I'm in charge. And so I'm saying, we're going to repeal and replace the Tobago, the Trinidad and Tobago Act to make it a more modern act that reflects the true Trinidad and Tobago as it is. It's an old slave act that refers to us as a colony, the British colony of Tobago and the British colony of Trinidad. So in fact, in law, we are still British colonies. That's the only place that Trinidad and Tobago was formed and was never revisited. We have to fix that 1887 Act. Once you define Tobago there and you define Trinidad, then it's now easy for the Constitution to breathe. The Constitution, like the Bible begins and says, in the beginning, God. It never tells you where God come from. The Constitution begins by saying Trinidad and Tobago. It doesn't tell you where Trinidad and Tobago came from. To know it came from, you have to go back.
Right.
And so once we address those two issues, you have to put a little bit in the Constitution, because Tobago is really an island of its own and a country of its own, and Trinidad will be a country of its own as defined by the newly constructed and amended, etc., Trinidad and Tobago Act. We must be countries of our own. As countries of our own, we are partnering for economic reasons, security reasons,
Right.
etc. That is what we want, and I will pursue that. I have the intellect, I have the experience, and I have the ability to manage people. I've managed over 80,000 persons in Trinidad and Tobago under the PSA, and under NATOC, National Trade Union Center, I represented over 300,000 persons, working people. So I know to deal with different persons of different ethnicity, different religious background, different social status, whether it be money or environment, etc. So I'm unbothered by that. One thing I know, when I go down there, I represent a developed country who the people have developed in their minds and know what they want.
Right. And once I understand your vision and where you are taking this in terms of allowing the people to have that vote,
That's
or that
right.
right to vote, reality is, and I will compare it similar to the consultation process, there are people who just wouldn't follow through. So even though you ask Tobagonians to vote, there's no guarantee that the vote really represents everyone and what they want. And you see it, I mean, in when we go out and we vote, we exercise our right, and a political party wins, and they say the voice of the people have spoken. That may not necessarily be so, because there are lots of people who don't exercise their franchise. They have an opinion, but they do not go out there and vote. So how can we safely say that once we do this process, it means therefore that this is what the people of Tobago want? And I'm making that point against the backdrop of there have been consultations, there have been times where the quote unquote the powers that be would sit in a room, they advertise the consultation, and a handful of people show up.
That's right.
You know, to be people who see the need to make the time to be part of the process. But we all hold our own consultations on the block in the grocery, but when it's to formalize it, people don't follow through. So how can you be so sure that even with that voting process, that you can safely say, well, Tobago will get what it really wants?
Well, genuine consultation requires time, right? Then it requires information. All the information allows persons to make good and sensible decision must be placed on the table. And also requires giving persons the opportunity to listen, to dissect that conversation,
Right.
and to participate in deciding on that matter. You can't come to persons today and as the consultation finish, you have answers already. That is not the case. That is a sham.
Right.
They go in a place with their friends and their colleagues practicing skullduggery in the most vulgar form, open skullduggery, inviting their friends, whoever they call up, come and sit down here. Give them solo and bread to
Right.
drink and eat.
Right.
And then they come and sit, have consultation. Real consultation means, all right, the assemblymen would go of Tobago, and we will call the village council, the sports group, everyone to a discussion.
Right.
And it will be 3 or 4 discussions of that nature in the same area. People must say, read it, discuss it in a family, come back next week. You have TV program. It's a campaign, a full campaign where thousands or millions are spent explaining to people the differences between independence, autonomy, and an association.
Right.
When the day come to vote, those who refuse to vote, they have chosen. They have abstained.
Right.
In voting, there are always 3 types.
Yes.
For, against, and abstentions. You must
Right.
always count the abstentions.
Right.
People have a right to abstain. And so they would have spoken.
Right.
You have to accept that.
And Mr. Duke, you know, we have to cut our time short this morning because, of course, we have another guest in studio who's also waiting to share her perspective of what would have transpired earlier this week. But I must thank you, of course, for always being quite open and sharing with us and allowing the people of Tobago to hear your voice and your viewpoint. And I would just leave you with a minute just to, you know, maybe talk to your viewers. I know that you also have been campaigning and getting ready for whatever is to come. I don't know if you have any updates for us there as you continue to do your campaigning.
Well, yes, I would want to say to Tobago that this time around is very critical, not just because people are looking to be elected. The issues are very critical.
Right.
We need to send our best people to Trinidad. The best minds, the bravest persons, those who have the most experience to Trinidad. You can't take a new pair of boots and send them to Trinidad. Neither can you take an old pair of boots who have never scored anything for Tobago and you put them back in Trinidad and you want to win.
Right.
You have to take someone with a track record. And if you look at Watson Duke, I'm like FedEx, DHL, UPS, I deliver.
Mr. Duke, you
On
come
time.
up with the strangest and most interesting analogies.
time.
Every time I have a conversation with you, I must smile when you bring out those analogies. So thank you so much, sir, for
Thank you.
taking time off and sitting with me this morning.
Yes, ma'am.
Viewers, we go for a quick break. When we return, our second guest would sit with me this morning as we continue to have this very interesting conversation.